could open our Bibles to Psalms 47 and 1 through 4. And it says, "Oh, clap your hands, all ye people. Shout unto God with a voice of triumph. For the Lord the Most High is terrible. He is the great King over the earth. He shall subdue the people under us, and the nations under our feet. He shall choose our inheritance for us, the excellency of Jacob, whom he loved, Selah." This evening, I'd like to title my message, "Lifting Our Voices." Brother Price, if I could ask you to pray again.
Lord, we pray, Lord, you know your servant. From the top of his head to the soles of his feet, Lord. Let your anointing flow from the front to the back. Let us respond accordingly. Open our hearts to receive from you tonight, Lord. We praise you and thank you for it.
In Jesus' name, you may be seated. If you guys could help me minister this evening, I'm going to talk about lifting up our voices. In Psalms 47:1, it calls on every one of us to worship Lord joyfully. They're an urge to do, it's an urge for us so by clapping our hands and singing loudly. The Lord is proclaimed on ruling the entire earth. He defeated Israel's enemy, and he loves the chosen people. You know, there are several scriptures in the Bible, if we read, that tells us to lift up our voices and praise God. I believe myself every time that we come to church that we should lift up our voices and worship God with everything that we have within us. I don't believe that we should just sit in the pews and look around, you know, and not worship God. I believe we come to church to unite together and worship God with everything that's within us. We have the freedom to worship. We are the children of the Most High. We have something to get excited about. We do have the right to shout and sing. You know, we all have something to get excited about. Some of us might not know it, but we do. God filled us with the Holy Ghost. You know, God moved upon us. You know, and God rejoices with us, and the angels rejoice with us. Every time that we come into the house of the Lord and we worship God, the angels are singing and dancing with us. And that gives us a reason to shout and sing. We come to church sometimes and we're not in the best of mood. We're all human. Something happened on the way to church. Somebody cut us off, or we had a rough week at work. But I believe that we should all leave that at the door, because when we worship God, something is about to happen. We're going to have a breakthrough. It feels like when we don't worship God because something bad happens, it feels like we're blaming God for the situation. But it's not God's fault whatever happened, because we can worship him and he's going to change the situation around. We have the honor to worship God. We have the freedom to worship God. If you go to a place like China, they have to have secret underground church services every time they go to church. And if they get caught, sorry, I lost my spot. I knew that would happen. If they get caught, they get brutally beaten, they get tortured, and even possibly killed if they get caught worshiping God. In Ethiopia, if they do not reject God, they will be tortured, and they will be beaten for not rejecting God. And in places like Vietnam and Cuba, they go, and we have missionaries and pastors there, and they go out through the land every day. And if they get caught worshiping God, they could get beaten, they could get tortured. You know what? We have no reason to be sitting in our churches quiet and not worshiping God when we come. You know what? No matter the songs that are sung, no matter who's up here preaching, we need to worship God if we want to see great things happen. Because if we don't worship God, God tells us the rocks are going to cry out in our place. And you know what? I don't want God to set the rocks to cry out my place, because I want to worship him. And I'm preaching to myself tonight, because I know sometimes when I come to church, I like praising God, but I'm scared to lift my voice of what people's going to think or say about how I worship, but it really don't matter. It matters to God what we do and when we lift up our voice. We got to give him all the glory and all the honor. I got to ask you this question. If we knew that God was standing at the back of the door right now, and it was the last chance that we got to worship God, and we got to lift up our voice and give God all the glory and all the praise, would we be just sitting in our pews right now? Or would we be worshiping? Would we be running the aisles? Would we be dancing? You know what? It should be that way every time that we come into the house of God. We should just know that we're not guaranteed tomorrow, and we need to worship God with whatever we got. We got to break down those strongholds. And the only way we're going to do that is if we worship him. The world is crying out. Excuse me. The world's crying out loud to our children, to our family, and to our friends. They have groups that are lifting their voices, and they're pushing things away. They got I don't even know how many letters in it now, the LMPQ. We just call it the alphabet. We got to deal with all that at work now. And, they're come onto our schools now, and they come into our workplaces, and now they're even allowing them into our libraries, and they're pushing God out of places, but they're allowing this junk and filth to come into them. But you know what, church? We need to stand together and lift our voices and get this back the way that it needs to be. It's not just going to happen by us coming sitting in our pews. You know what? The devil don't care how many people come to church and sit in the pews. It's when we start lifting our voices that he starts getting nervous. Most of you are familiar, and I'm not going to be long, and I know I'm trying to not speak too fast and all that tonight, but I get nervous. But we're all familiar with the scriptures about the walls of Jericho. God told Joshua to march around the wall once a day, to do so quietly. And on the seventh day around the city 7 times. And the 7th time I want the 7 priests to blow the horns, the ram horns, and band to sound the trumpet, and all the people shall shout with a great voice. And when they all shout together and blow ram horns, and everyone shouts with a great voice, the walls come tumbling down. When they lifted their voices, the walls come tumbling down. You know what? I believe our city, our towns have walls around them that we need to tear down and allow God to move, because we're not waiting upon a revival. We're living in the day of revival. God's pouring out his spirits across the land. God's doing what he said he could do. But you know what? We're waiting for that great revival to come. And you know what? It's about to come. But you know what? We have to worship God with everything that's in us. We can't come just to church and sit and be quiet in church and not worship God. We have our quiet place to worship at home and worship God in our prayer closets. But you know what? I believe that we need to lift up our voices when we come together. There are people in this place this evening. I believe that they need to have some walls that torn down and some shackles and loosened. And I believe with everything that's within me, with my faith tonight, if we begin to shout and worship, you know what? I believe those walls will fall down tonight. If you need something from God tonight, I believe that could happen tonight. You know, we hear Brother Vincent was at a place that a lady got up and walked out of a wheelchair for the first time in 2 years. You know, God could do the miraculous here tonight. He's not just wherever pastor's at or just wherever somebody else is at. He's in this place, but it's up to us to worship God and entertain. You know, we sing the song, God, you're welcome here. You come in this place. God's already in this place tonight. We just got to worship him and entertain his presence. And then his presence is going to start to fall down. And we're going to see the miraculous begin to take place. And that's what we need to happen, people, tonight. And not just because it's me up here, because there could have been 100 other people up here preaching tonight. And they would have done a much better job. But I believe tonight we have to worship God with everything that's within us. And we have to call upon his name. How many people tonight want to receive something from God tonight? You know, how many people need to receive something from God tonight? You know what, music, if you could come. I knew I wasn't going to be long, and I apologize. I'm not, well, some people might be happy. They'll make it home early. You know, we'll get out early. But you know what? If you could give more time to God, not worry about what's going to happen or how quick we get home, but if we could worship God. You know, if we could have an altar call, just a powerful move of God. But you know what I believe tonight? I know I'm stepping out, and I'm like way out of my comfort zone already for not looking at notes and getting lost and all that. But I feel tonight if we could all just stand. You know, they marched around the walls of Jericho. And on the 7th time, on the 7th day, they shouted with a great voice. And I know a few people here. I don't know everybody personally, but I know a few people here, and I know they're loud. And I know they can get very loud when they want to be. When they're out, you know what? When you go to a hockey game, I've never been to a baseball game. I'd probably fall asleep. I can fall asleep on a hockey game most times too. But anyways, they have this fan meter that comes up about how loud the fans will I was going to say worship, but that's basically what they do sometimes as players. And the louder the fans are, the meter just goes up higher and higher until it reaches the point where it touches the other side. And every time that fan meter comes up, the crowd goes wild. They want to see that sign that go around, that arrow go around and touch the extreme mark. But that's how we should be when we worship God in church. We should be trying to reach louder and become louder and give him praise and worship him.